test, 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 test. Mic check, 1 2. Mic check, mic check. Mic check, mic check. Mic check. Test, 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 test. Yeah.
The other stuff's pretend.
Okay. This is a meeting of the Consolidated Commission on Utilities. It's a Guam Water Works Authority working session. The time is 4:36, and for the record, those present are myself, Commissioner Unchalco, Commissioner Sanchez, Commissioner Santos, and Commissioner Gutherds. Everybody's here. And our General Manager, Miguel Bordalio, the floor is yours for issues for decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first issue for decision that we're presenting tonight is Resolution 09 FY 2021. And this is regarding the pressure zone realignment and tank repair replacement design project. Change order number 2 for this engineering design contract. If you recall, we're conducting this project in phases. We completed phase 1 and put it out to bid. It is now under construction, so the design of phase 2 has been underway, and the change order that we're bringing to you this evening is intended to provide additional improvements in the Nimitz Hill area. If you recall, over the last several weeks we've had lots of problems with the particular line, and it's because the pressures in the line are very high. There was already a pressure reducing valve that was part of the design scope for phase 2, but because of the emergent nature of the breaks that we were having and the inconvenience and impact to the residents in the Nimitz area, our field crews installed a temporary PRV in order to reduce the pressures in the line that were causing these breaks. This is an old asbestos cement pipe. It's currently leading to the Nimitz Hill Estates area. So the change order will involve an additional permanent pressure reducing valve for the to replace the temporary one that was put into service. And then also, because the line is so problematic between the temporary PRV and an existing PRV station closer to the estates, we added the replacement of that line. So that's what we want to get designed. So when we go in and do the work on permanizing that pressure reducing valve station, we can just take care of that section of line, so there won't be any more susceptible line to break and cause further outages. So that work is included in this change order. Prior to this change order, the authorized contract amount under this design contract was $3.1 million, and this work for the Nimitz Hill water improvements, the design work is about $80,000. And then we also are introducing at this time an additional budget for construction management services during the phase 2 once we put that out to bid. So the total additional we're requesting is about $279,000, which will bring the total authorized amount to 3.4, I believe.
3.433.
Right.
On page 5.
And this will be funded by bond funding from the CIP line items noted in the resolution and the justification summary.
Any questions? Commissioner Unchalco. Yes.
The actual change order is the PRV line, but the resolution also includes $200,000 for phase 2 construction. So is that part of the change order? The construction management for phase 2?
CM services were contemplated for phase one on a time and material basis, and there's sufficient funding there. But in preparation for when we put phase two out to bid, the services during construction from the design engineer will also be required. And so this 200,000 is an allotment to be used on a time and materials basis.
But not necessarily for the PRV change, right? It's for the entire
Well,
phase two?
this is all for design and design support work. So the PRV change, the actual construction work will come when we put it out to bid, the phase two part. It's under design right now.
Okay.
But this does cover they already had in the phase two design, they were already authorized for one PRV. What we're adding is the temporary one that we put in, making that permanent, and then the line repair work.
But the 200,000 in construction management is not just for that change order, it's for the entire thing,
No, it's for the entire phase two.
Because I guess that's what I was getting at, because for the construction management is more than twice as much as what the change
design,
order
right,
is.
Right.
Okay,
It's for the entire.
for the
phase
entire
two.
phase two. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No? Moving right along.
The next resolution we have is 10 FY 2021, and this is relative to additional funding for the tank repair and bypass project. This is a construction project that we had originally put out to bid with a base bid and then several additive bid items. At the time that we awarded the contract, we knew definitely that we would need 2 of the additive bid items, so that those were previously authorized. However, for some of the other tanks, we didn't know the scope of repairs until we were able to take the tanks offline and inspect the interiors. So on the basis of that additional work, which is underway, we did find that we need we need major repairs on 2 of the tanks, the Malolo Reservoir and the Windward Hills Reservoir. So we're seeking to add 2 of the additive bid items from the original procurement. So these were competitively bid. We're just authorizing them now that we know the work is necessary. And so the total for those 2 bid items is 2.26 million. And we're seeking on top of that 15% contingency of 334,000. So the total requested funding amount will be 2.56 million for those 2 additive bid items in Malolo and Windward Hills.
Now, this is to repair the tanks. You're not replacing these tanks.
Correct. These are tanks that we anticipated would still have useful life, but whether they needed minor repairs or major repairs, some of the work.
So now that you've taken them offline, if you've done all the inspections, this
Right.
is now what you're gearing up to do.
Right.
Okay. Questions? Commissioner Chapo.
And about the anticipated useful life after the repairs is estimated at what?
I think in general, the repairs are intended to add another 15 to 20 years of lifespan on top of the existing.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Okay, Miguel, next item.
For the next issue for decision, I'm going to ask the CFO to present this one. This is resolution number 11 FY 2021, and this is in line with what we talked to the commissioners previously about our ability to maintain debt service coverage for the year, given the effects of the pandemic. So I'll let you present this.
As we previously discussed when we first put together the revenue projections for FY21, we had anticipated that that we would be able to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic in a shorter amount of time, but it's turning out that the recovery will be later, longer. And so one of the things that we did was we did put together a cost containment plan in place. We shaved about $7 million from our O&M budget, but we're concerned that hard to see the future. We're not sure what we'll be recovering, even though there's been some discussion about reopening tourism. And so what we wanted to do, concerned about our debt service coverage, what we wanted to do was to look at different tools that we could use to preserve that. And in our bond indenture, there is the mechanism to establish a rate stabilization fund. And as you recall, right after the board recently approved the release of the funds that were originally set up as an internal reserve to set up for debt service. And so the proposal is to use those funds that were originally reserved, put that back into a rate stabilization fund that would then be used to help shore up our debt service coverage. So it would be part of the, it would be added into income as you calculate debt service coverage. So we did take a look at the bond indenture, speak to our auditors, our financial consultant, and the bond counsel to see if this would be an avenue that we could take. And so this resolution is the result of those discussions. So we released about 11.4 million that was originally in reserve. We don't think we're going to need that entire amount, and the proposal is for us to wait until closer to the end of the fiscal year to determine what amount should be placed in the rate stabilization fund. And then the idea is that that fund would be placed with the trustee, and then any withdrawals from the rate stabilization fund, we would come back to the board for those release.
So these are the cash reserves that were discretionary. And when the board changed the coverage policy from the 1.75 to the 1.5, those reserves which were discretionary just counted towards our liquidity. So
It's part of the working capital.
part of our working capital. So what we're proposing is to establish the rate stabilization fund, taking part of that liquidity, putting it away under the control of the trustee, and that then becomes countable as revenues to make up for the shortfall we're experiencing with COVID, and that makes sure that we meet our 1.25 minimum debt service coverage requirement. So we're not using it, we're just moving it from these reserves into the rate stabilization fund where it sits, and it ensures that we have adequate funds to make up for the revenue shortfalls and meet our debt service coverage.
Okay. Commissioner Sanchez? Go ahead.
So it's funds we already have.
Yes?
Why would you want to put it in this when isn't it counted anyways?
It's not recognizable as revenues, to my understanding, until it was previously recognized. So,
So these are funds that we had set aside in
From
earlier
revenues.
periods.
but the indenture allows us to
To count them, to put them away and count them in the
Current year.
in the debt service coverage calculation for this period.
but it requires the specific creation of a rate stabilization fund and then locking it away
With the trustee.
with the trustee.
Okay, so notwithstanding that and the issue that we're facing, it's cash that we have.
Yes.
Cash reserves that we have.
Yes.
And you said the word at our discretion.
They were discretionary,
Well-
meaning that they weren't restricted
Meaning-
by the indenture already.
Okay. So why would you want to tie your hands and put it in a fund where you,
Because if we don't do that, then we cannot recognize it as revenues and we can't count it towards meeting the debt service coverage ratio.
We would only pull the trigger if we believe that our debt service coverage is below the.
but what happens if we want to go use this for something else?
We would come back to you.
And the trustee's going to be okay with that? The bond indenture doesn't tie it?
Well, we wouldn't want to use it unless we were comfortable that we could meet the indenture requirements
I
for
get
debt service
that
coverage
part,
ratio.
Miguel. I'm just trying to figure out if it's cash reserves that we already had and exist, and we're not yet pulling the hammer on the whole debt service thing. I would say you put that rainy day fund and leave it there, just in case. I mean, why take money that we've put away for ourselves and managed it properly and then say, hey, wait, all of a sudden, to satisfy something that we're not at yet, are we getting closer to the edge? Is that what we're?
Well, we're not proposing to put it in now. We're seeking to establish it now so that we have it available to us, and as we move throughout the fiscal year, as we get closer to the end of the fiscal year, whatever based on, we continue to make our cost containment efforts, whatever we end up needing in order to meet that minimum 1.25, at that point we will, and we're estimating now it's going to be 11.4, right?
11.4 is what's available. Like we were talking about between 6 and 8 million if we needed to. But if projections, if our revenues come in
Closer to where we need them to be?
and we keep our expenditures, at a level to allow us to have debt service coverage that meets the bond indenture, then there's no need to pull the trigger, and we wouldn't. This would only be in case we projected that our debt service coverage would go below the required percentage required in the bond indenture.
I mean, if you put it in another account, not a stable, what will happen then?
It doesn't get
counted?
It doesn't get counted as part of the debt service coverage ratio because it's not protected. The idea is we're protecting
And tied up.
Until things get better, yeah.
And we would only propose to use it if we had to. This is, kind of a tool that we were looking at in case, revenues fell below what we.
So it's forward-looking. We're asking you to give us a tool in the toolbox so that we can maintain the debt service coverage ratio, but we're not ready to pull the trigger on locking the funds away yet. But we think it's prudent to have it now, and I think it might be also helpful to have it before we go through with the true-up process.
And the bulk of the funds come from where, Tom?
It was the funds that were originally set aside for the internally that debt service coverage reserve fund that for the internally calculated.
The official name was Working Capital Reserve.
Reserve.
Debt service.
And it's accumulated over the years?
Yes.
Now it's,
And it was about 11.4 at the time that we dissolved it.
if we wanted to use it for something, what would you then come to the board to ask? Not discretionary.
Rate increase, or you'd have to cut your costs.
I mean, a lot of times the rate stabilization fund is a tool that utilities use to kind of, keep rates level, and so you don't see. Yeah.
So what we're seeing now is the perfect example of why a rate stabilization fund would be used and why it was written into the indenture. You see some decline in revenues that you weren't anticipating, and so if you have the reserves and you put them and you secure them in this lockbox, then they can be counted as to make sure that you meet your debt service coverage requirement.
What do we have in the GPA side that's similar? Self-insurance fund doesn't meet the same criteria, although it's counted as part of our liquidity.
I'm not sure that this is used by GPA, but it is used by other utilities. There must have been some forward thought about it because it's written into the bond index.
The stream we never had. I mean, what was the reason then that we created the self-insurance fund?
Well, I think on the GPA side, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner Sanchez.
As I recall, on the GPA side, as you know, we can't insure T&D.
Right.
So we can insure generation and the other hard assets, but we can't do T&D. So the self-insurance fund was created by the boards, the PUC, just kind of, we know that if GPA gets hit by a typhoon and poles come down, we have no insurance. So we want to build up that fund of 20 million, and that's you know what, if the sewage hits the fan and Typhoon Simon is a bad typhoon and GPA needs cash,
That's where you go.
they have 20 million, and whether you want to call it a pre-deductible or, I mean, we're just sort of it's self-insurance, right? So, but we've never had that on the GWA side, mainly because you can insure You can insure our, I guess we can't do, we don't insure sewer and water lines, do we? Just, do we insure tanks? So if we have an earthquake and if we have a bad earthquake and Miguel needs $5 million, we have an insurance policy Miguel can call on to grab. We have something like that now.
I believe so, yeah.
So, thank you, Senator, Commissioner Santos. I was following, you're asking the same questions I was going to ask. And as Commissioner Santos said, we already have this cash, right? It's accumulated cash. It's kind of like earnings from prior years, it's almost like, right? We throw it in the checkbook, right? And we set it aside, and it's non-restricted. We want to self-restrict it now to offer it to, as a standby for basically in a year where I saw some of the later reports, our revenues are being whacked quite a bit. So you want us to take cash we already have, dedicate it to a restricted fund, which we then offer to the bondholder, saying, here's more security, and you get to count that 11 million when you calculate debt service coverage, revenue, expenses. Revenue is X, and then you get to add 11 million to that revenue in this. Anytime you need it, right?
I don't think we need to lock away the. Needed to.
But right now we're just creating the fund, but we're not moving the fund, moving the money.
We're just getting authorization
To create the
to
fund.
create the fund.
And
The idea is to wait until close to the fiscal better idea of where our revenues and our
21 revenue.
That way, we lock away the minimum amount required to meet the debt service coverage ratio and still maintain the rest for liquidity.
And then you're going to have to deal with lower revenues by cutting costs.
Which they're already doing.
So in many ways, it's sort of a placeholder for, when things are not so good. We held cash and we're telling our lenders, by the way, we're holding this cash and we're not restricting cash. Count it towards your coverage. Okay? And it's a tool that was contemplated.
And we vetted it with the financial advisor and the.
And you have the cash. We're now self-restricting some of our flexibility because we know this is a tough time. Are we understanding it right? And right now, we would just create the fund, or do you actually create the fund and then move the 11 million into it? But it'll be counted on the balance sheet as a restricted fund. Right now, it's not a restricted fund. It's just cash on the balance sheet. Restrict 11 million like we restrict some of our other cash. And this,
monthly less than 11.
or whatever the number,
Yes.
the number is. 11 is what's
That
available.
was what was.
Oh, and you're not sure what you won't know to the end of the fiscal year whether you need 6 of the 11, 10 of the 11, 11 of the 11, or none of the 11. Thank you.
Okay. Just, I have one question. This, just to make sure we all understand, this 11.4 million in the working reserve surplus fund is in addition to the bond required working
Yes.
reserve funds. So in other words, this was at a time when we were trying to do our credit rating and do better with the bonds, the bond rating people. So we tried to build reserves and show them all these reserves. So this is over and above the bond requirements. And so therefore, that's why we can do this. If you put this aside, then you can count it as revenue, if you need to count it as revenue to work on your debts.
Yeah,
Right?
would you count it as revenue, or you would just say, and we have this fund? If your revenue is
It would be
revenue.
added, right, it would be added to net revenue.
But it just wants to go with the chairman's question. When they calculate our debt service coverage every year, they're going to say, here's your revenues, here's your cost, here's your ratio. Oh, and then if the ratio is not at 1.25, we can grab the 11 million or whatever the number necessary.
Right.
That was set aside, separated by GWA on purpose because of concerns with pandemic revenues and coverage. And we self-restricted it. And to the degree we need it, we will grab it in the fiscal year we need it, right? Because we're going to create this fund and we're going to self-restrict 11. Are you going to restrict?
We won't know yet, but
until the.
Oh, so right now we're just setting up the.
Setting up the fund and authorizing them to move up to 11.4 million.
Oh, but you're not gonna physically move
Not yet.
anything in there.
And they're going to inform us.
If sales come back, if we get there anyway without.
But we'd like,
Yeah, and they want to have the authorization now. Now, the other question is, you would still have to come back and tell us, okay, we've decided we need it, and this is what we need, right?
yes, we would do that.
Okay.
And we had coverage, when do we calculate the coverage for GW? Every October?
We calculate it every month, but we did do it.
Okay, so every September-ish, we say this is the, like FY 2020 coverage last year was that, right? We've already calculated that. And each month, I know we calculate on a going forward basis, but at the end of the fiscal year 21, we'll go through the same end of the year exercise. And if you need to touch some of this money, you've already put it in the toolbox.
So, just for clarity, the debt service coverage is calculated for the whole year. It's not calculated on month by month. You do it internally
Right.
to see where you are. But at the end of the year, we need to be able to say to the bondholders and everybody else, okay, this was our debt service coverage for the year. And that's why at that point, at the end of the year, you know what you need, you pull in and you put it aside, it counts towards revenue so that therefore it makes your debt service coverage meet. Okay,
And we don't go into technical default.
and we don't go into technical default. And it also will make the bondholders and the bond raters happy because they know you're having a mechanism to always meet your debt service coverage.
Year of debt service coverage.
Right.
Operations.
Uh-huh.
You're grabbing it now while you have it, cash, from your prior year of success, saying, can we self-restrict?
Yeah.
In case we need it for debt. And this is just to create the fund now.
Yeah. Any other questions? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
It's actually a good headache to have.
Yeah, it's, we're
you
lucky
actually have
that,
the money.
we're lucky that we have
We have
the,
the money.
that we kept the money. You know, I mean, listen, we went through some gyrations where we were very tight on ourselves.
Yeah, and I don't recall in the many years, Joey, Mr. Chairman, that this tool has been
Yeah.
used by any of the entities we've
Not
we've
on Guam.
watched. But
Not on Guam.
But COVID is COVID, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, it's
Now we have a reason why we might need to look at it.
it's it's a good example of what could happen. That's not a typhoon.
Right, okay. Miguel, do you have a GM report or you? You do?
Yes?
Oh, okay.
It's quite a long one, and there's some good questions.
Okay, go ahead, shoot.
Okay. So moving on to, I think page
68.
68 of the board books. On page 69 is the update to the workforce availability report, and out of our 300, as of January 15, out of our 371 employees, 362 were healthy and reporting to duty, 97.6%. Moving on to
So you have two COVID employees at this point?
Sorry, this is what? This is, sorry, the date's wrong. It should be as of February 10th.
It says you have one employee with COVID-19 active case and one COVID-19 medical. Just two of our 371
Right.
are actively COVID.
And we do still have 7 employees who are healthy but telework.
Is that because of the space restrictions in their area?
Yeah,
You can't do the spacing you want?
This is a combination. We have some who are under doctor's orders. They're at higher risk, so they're still teleworking, and then we do have some that are space constrained. We kind of went over this the last.
But the other 364 are at work.
Right.
And I know we went over this last month, but I asked that question last month too. So these employees are not going anywhere. They're just staying home. So they're not going to the grocery store, which is just as risky as coming into work. or going anywhere else public. You're just staying home.
Yes.
And then are we, in terms
really
of
hard to
customer service in public areas, are we, it seemed easier to walk in the building here today. What is our status with our customers? They can walk into the main building and pay their bills, right? They can do all the other things, the online and all that, but their customers' physical presence in this building or two, they're allowed to go in and pay their bills?
As long as they follow
Follow
the
the
protocols. We're still doing,
We're not receiving customers at Upper Tumon. Still just going through drive-through for payments. Customers can come in to deal with the customer service reps for account-related issues. Payments are strictly
So here or opportunity?
in both places.
Okay. Now, if I need to see an engineer for a project I'm building, can I come to this building and meet with GWA Engineering?
I believe we can, and we're still doing,
Procurements?
we're still doing coordination online as well.
And then procurements, your people are able to come here and drop off the bids, right? How that's happening.
Yes, we have drop boxes.
So we have more expanded customer access. Still, it's restricted to the mask and the distance and those kinds of things. We're open for business, more or less.
More than less, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Santos, yes.
The vaccination.
A young group.
The number of employees receiving the first shot as of February 10th is 70 out of the 371. And then the second shot is just the 12. So these are, the 70 have either qualified by age, but not because of their utility worker status.
Why are we not essential? That's,
Well, we think we are, but
We're not the teachers or the.
yeah, I know, but if you don't have water, you don't have a hospital.
The rush last 2 weeks ago was basically only took care of the another group.
Turned away because of age?
Correct, yeah, because they didn't meet the established criteria.
Can I ask a question? How do we get to become essential? Do we have to work with public health? I mean, oh, okay.
The governor, I mean,
No, I mean, I'm serious.
It's a vaccine that has its own life.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If you're going to go to the next status, whatever that's going to be, it opens up, the challenge is going to be vaccines.
Oh, okay.
It's not a question of people wanting it.
It's a supply thing.
Today's challenge is supply.
Okay, got it. Okay.
That's probably why.
Don't get a better penetration. Right.
It'd be interesting, Commissioner Santos, to ask GPA how many people have got this up. We'll find out on Thursday.
I don't see it being this low. I mean, the target, right, you know, is between 70 and 80%.
Yeah,
I'm going to present this tomorrow and say we're way too low
yeah.
for an essential agency. We're not going to sit here and you're going to have to put us up to listen.
Yeah.
Let's provide the vaccines and we'll.
You can, that'd be great. It'd be great if you can help us.
Okay.
The only other way, and I know people work these in, they don't want to get tested. Whatever you can do, nasal swab, that's the only thing available. That's vaccine.
Okay. Moving right along.
So let's
Yeah.
pass off.
February 10th.
Okay.
Okay.
Moving on to, in the operations section for water production, we had, over the course of January, 93 out of 120 wells operational, producing 34.9 million gallons a day. The springs were active at 0.32 MGD and then Ugam put out 2.2 MGD, and again, just under 1 MGD for Tumon Maui, for a total production of 38.4 MGD. See on the Tumon Maui, well, we had one day where the system went down, but overall we're, as I said, averaging right around 1 MGD. For the distribution system, we maintain 92.9% operability across all three sections, with the southern having the 100%, and then central 86.7% and 92.3% for the northern distribution pump stations. Our distribution tank levels were fairly consistent. We did have a slight dip in reservoir levels about 3/4 of the way through the month, but they did climb back up. So we're holding steady around 50% capacity, which is where we want to be. On the page 74, the wastewater collections, we're doing a little better, 90.1% operability for all of our wastewater pump stations, still having our challenges there. We were 3.3 miles for our cleaning in January, so a little bit under the 5-mile target. And then the following few slides in board books through page 77 just show the neighborhoods where we did our cleaning this past month. For wastewater treatment in January, we had average daily flows of 10.47 MGD. We processed and disposed of 1.46 million pounds of sludge at a cost of $131,000. We could see from the chart the agate plant had reduced flows this month as compared to December, primarily just related to it being a little drier.
Dry season.
On the asset management side, for PM to CM ratios, we're maintaining 66% work orders for preventive maintenance and 34% for corrective maintenance. And out of those percentages, on the preventive maintenance side, we were at 75% completion of the work orders issued, and for corrective maintenance, 90% complete on the work orders issued. And then if you consider with the leak repairs, we're leak repair corrective maintenance at 54% and equipment corrective maintenance at 46% of our total corrective maintenance work orders. And for completion, the leak repairs are 98% complete for all work orders issued, and the equipment 90% completion for all of those work orders that were issued for the month of January. Just to give you an update on our one Guam, we did have the Tumon Maui well quarterly inspection in January 26th. No feedback yet on the results of the inspection, but no major issues were pointed out. On our coordination for the OEA projects, the one remaining project that we still need the Navy's assistance with is the NGLA monitoring wells. We have the temporary construction easements, but I have not signed those yet because we are still waiting to award the last contract to the expansion, the new wells. We are not able to award that. We're still waiting for OEA to transfer those funds out of the Northern District grant to the NGLA monitoring well grant. And so far, the paperwork has been, we've got approval on it, I think, from the director, but the paperwork is in process. So we have everything we need except the final document so that we can award the contract. With regard to the marine cantonment, we did get a request, informal request to provide water to the Navy and to sell them water at that location for one of their projects. After analysis, we issued a letter to the Navy saying that we could provide it. We are waiting for a formal request and date when they need that service, but it looks like in the very near future we will be selling some additional water to the Navy.
Do we trade that with Fennel water?
That's correct. The intent is to do a volume for volume exchange.
So at least we get, that'll help our costs on the Fennel side, right?
Correct.
Because They overcharge us. So are we going to overcharge them for sewer? I mean, we're going to reasonably charge them for sewer? I see they want to give us their sewer now.
That is something else that was under discussion. They are considering that we've provided them some initial information about what it would take, what the capacity of the Agate Santa Rita plant is, and what additional improvements would be necessary in order for us to take their wastewater flows. We also discussed the potential need for pretreatment for some of their shipboard sites and industrial sites. So my understanding is they would presumably use their existing treatment plant site to do some of that pretreatment before they send it to us.
Commissioner Sanchez, yes.
Are they thinking of shutting down their wastewater plant if our agate is sufficient to meet their needs?
I think that's their long-term view,
Okay.
and they wanted to vet out whether we would be ready for it, and we've designed the plant to accommodate those flows with the addition of a third clarifier. So that would be the one improvement that we would need to take.
Would we get what about the outfall? Is that theirs?
It's shared.
It's shared.
Yeah.
Who physically owns the land on where the outfall is? They do?
So the junction box is on base. So we have our infrastructure going to that junction box, and they have their infrastructure going to that junction box, and then from there, it's a shared use outfall.
It's just the theory is their plant would shut down. If this all made sense, their plant would shut down, our plant would pick up their load, and then it would still go out the same outfall.
That's correct.
Okay, wow. Well, that's always been something we've talked about.
Yep.
You don't need two plants down there. And if they can do the pre-treatment there, that's a hell of a pre-treatment plant. It's pretty big. They're probably concerned about maintaining it and running it in the future, right? It's an older plant, right?
I think that's part of the concern. I think it also is future capacity. Do they want to invest in the upgrades, or do they want us to be our customer? And I think there's recognition that we're in a better place than we were perhaps before, and so they're more open
It's an option.
to us,
Then they
to
have-
them being our customer.
Like that, okay.
But Mr. Chairman, we have
Yes.
to be careful that we don't recap,
No.
that we really do have the capacity.
Right.
It was
It was
built
designed.
into the design of the plant, and not just to accommodate their flows, but also our growth on the civilian side is also factored into the capacity of the plant.
How about cost-wise? I mean,
It's revenue for us,
yeah,
Revenue positive.
wouldn't that allow you to hire more people?
if
Well, if
necessary.
it's
Only if you
needed.
need it.
Only if we need it,
But
but
it's
if,
revenue, it's revenue.
So I think for Agate Santa Rita, I think we're pretty well fixed for staff. The more immediate concern, I think, would be for Northern District. Once that comes online, it's a bigger plant. We might need some additional bodies up there,
But
we're not.
you have the load up there anyway.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think Commissioner Guthertz, the way I would look at it is, we have that Agate Santa Rita plant, and all our costs are built in, and if we just take more load, it increases the revenue, decreases our costs to our other ratepayers too.
And we'll
So-
charge them a rate.
And we'll charge them a rate,
a
yeah.
cost of service rate.
Sure,
I mean,
sure.
it's not- right.
Yeah, I
But
mean, they
I
pay-
like the fact that the collaboration is producing these kinds of conversations at all.
Yeah.
It's-
This is something we wanted.
We weren't able to talk about this 20 years ago.
Yeah.
As long as it benefits our ratepayers.
Oh, it will.
So in line with that, the two groups, the Navy's engineering group and our engineering group, did meet last month in a joint strategy session. So the strategy framework, which kind of outlines the different projects for the interoperability between our systems, kind of as a goal for us to move towards. So all those projects were vetted between the two different departments in a joint meeting so that we can kind of finalize that. So when we update the MOU, that will also be included. So kind of in line with, them becoming a customer.
Commissioner Machado, you have a question?
But Miguel, there'll be needed infrastructure in order to connect them to,
Yes.
or be able to?
On
Okay.
both sides, on
On
our
both
side
sides.
and their side. And they recognize that. I mean, the discussions are still very preliminary, but it's a positive sign that they're considering it seriously.
And that'll all go into the cost to serve them. we'll recover our costs, whatever we have to do. It's only fair.
Maybe we can get them to give us a big down payment, like the cost of our plant, right?
Now.
Well, I mean, because we borrowed money. We borrowed money to build the plant.
Yeah.
So I know if we're successful in ever getting this far, and we know it's just a concept, but it's a concept that we now actually are thinking about having a conversation about, whereas before it wasn't even a concept. But obviously in your pricing to them, it would be the cost of that plant.
Yeah, and the debt service and everything. Yeah.
But they could reduce their rate with an upfront down payment, right?
Well, that'll be the negotiating part.
Yeah, but all good, all good, Mr.
All good. We're going in the right direction.
Absolutely.
That's the point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, moving on,
Miguel,
on
moving
page
on.
83, the court order summary, no real changes there, 98.9% completion on the court order. However, one thing to note, we did file a motion to extend the deadline for the court order. We received a notification, or General Counsel received a notification that there was a filing by the judge, but we haven't received it yet. So there's been some movement. We're hopeful that it's positive in extending because that's what we proposed, but we haven't seen the signed order yet.
And how long's the extension? Another year, 18 months?
2024?
2 years, 2 years. So three.
So 2 years.
3 years, 3 years, yeah. December 2020 to.
Oh, you did get it? Yeah. Okay. So we do have the signed order now.
And it is now 2023?
June.
Great job. Good. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the land acquisition summary. We're still trying to get the land registration moved forward for the Estimbo property for that tank. We don't have it yet. So we did make some progress on the airport reservoir, the small sliver. I think all the filings have been made with the probate court. We're just waiting for the probate judge's approval of the sale, and then we can button that up and then move forward. We'll have everything we need to move forward with the airport tanks in terms of property. And we are currently working on getting the parceling survey done for the AG12 deep well. We have a pilot hole already, so we want to complete that and turn it into a production well. And on the Aspen Springs, we had a little bit of movement getting approvals required for the biological survey work, but there's still archaeological work that might need to be done, and we don't still coordinating that. That would be for the Aspen Springs Rehabilitation Project.
Good, great.
Okay, and then on page 86, just the regular leak repair summary, and as you can see, we're still holding below 20 leak repair work orders at the end of any given day, so we're doing good there. And then moving on to page 89, Chris is going to go through our COVID-19.
The bad news.
There we go. So we put together a short presentation on COVID-19 impact on collections.
Okay.
The first 2 pages are basic timeline of different things that have happened throughout COVID pandemic since March all the way through January. The key bullets to kind of focus on is the last bullet on page 1, which is June 22nd, when the first batch of pandemic unemployment assistance claims were paid out. And you'll see later why that's important. And then on the second page, the second to last bullet, when the pandemic unemployment assistance ended on December 31st, and then was later extended to March 13th, 2021.
Do some, but not all, yeah. I heard about 10,000 folks of the 30,000 that are partially unemployed now are not receiving benefits.
Correct.
Okay.
That sucks.
So how did it affect us? That's the next slide.
So, and slide 3, the relief for residential and commercial customers. On March 16th, GWA suspended disconnections. May 19th, we started outreach to reach our customers that were in arrears, trying to get them to sign up with payment plans. In June 2020, we planned on restarting disconnections on July 1st, but in discussions at that month's board meeting, it was deferred pending more time for public notice. In that same meeting, Resolution 30/2020 was passed, which allowed residential and commercial customers to enter into a 12-month payment plan. And the next slide is a table of different metrics related to our payment plans. So the important thing on this slide is to notice that 2020 compared to 2019, across the board, whether it was the number of payment plans or the amount of payments that were made on those payment plans, everything is down significantly. So it doesn't really make sense because you'll see later that, arrears are up, but payment plans are down. And so, I think it's an indication that when the threat of disconnection is not there, people just aren't going to sign up for payment plans and they're not going to worry
take
about
advantage.
it. And so that's what those numbers indicate to us, is that, in a normal year when we're doing disconnections, we saw 7,634 payment plans. In 2020, when we weren't doing disconnections, it dropped down to 4,008. A pretty significant drop there. As far as the outreach to customers were concerned, starting in May 2020 through January, we made 13,480 calls, or an average of about 1,500 per month. We had about a 28% contact rate, 3,700 successful contacts, about 412 a month. 1,110 payment plans were established as a result of that outreach, and that's about 123 pay plans per month. So where does that leave us? Our current status, fiscal year to date operating revenues are down 14% compared to last year. 2020 revenues were 10% below the approved budget. Our residential receivables for active accounts without a pay plan or without an open dispute, for receivables greater than 60 days, it increased approximately 250% year over year. On the commercial side, similarly, we had a 34% increase in 60 days plus in arrears. And then again, reiterating that the number of residential payment plans entered in 2020 decreased by 48%. For commercial, it decreased by 47%.
So people just blew us off and didn't pay their bill. Well,
Their priorities
that may be too
were-
difficult, too
yeah,
challenging
for
at
other-
work, but
Seems like the priorities were for other things, knowing that they didn't have to worry about
Getting
threat of
disconnected.
disconnection. Next slide is just a graphical representation of the pre-COVID and post-COVID 60 days and greater accounts receivable. So you can see that it basically goes from an average of about 1 million pre-COVID up to 2.5 million as it stands today. And as I mentioned earlier, that June 20, when the pandemic unemployment assistance first started getting paid out, you can see the drop in the number of accounts, which is the yellow line. You can see the drop of accounts in arrears after the first payments went off.
People had money.
And then you can gradually see it
Going back
getting
up.
worse as it got closer to the end of the year, when nobody really knew if that pandemic unemployment assistance was coming. So people started conserving whatever cash and they had left. And so now we've climbed back up almost to where we were back in May, as far as the receivables. And on the commercial side, it's a little bit better. The pattern was pretty similar up until about June, and then it climbed up until about October, but we've seen some good progress in payments that have been made in December and January. So for next steps, we'd like to try to determine a date to restart disconnections. And the thought behind that would be, we would still want people to sign up for payment plans, and if they did, we wouldn't disconnect them. But if they didn't come in and see us or go online and sign up for a payment plan, then we would put them on the list for disconnection. And then we'll continue the outreach and encourage customers to apply for the rent and utilities assistance program. So we're still waiting for feedback from the administration on what that, the guidance is on that.
For that program?
So we
Yeah.
still haven't found any.
They haven't established it, have they?
Yeah, still haven't established the rules.
Okay.
It's with Guam Housing Corporation Administration.
Money in there anyway, right?
This one's, I think there's over 30 million for the rent.
quite a
It's
bit of
rental
money.
assistance and utility
So
assistance.
it's gonna go to rent first, and
Yeah.
then,
And it's also for power as well. Power and
right,
water.
but, if I don't have, like, I'm gonna pay my house before I pay my power and water.
Yes. Commissioner Guthers.
$3 million support the recovery of the island. I think what we should do is a letter directly to the governor requesting that they set aside the amount that is missing here, or we're going to have to implement an effort. We'd like to avoid that. We understand the implements exist. We feel that this is a valid concern, be eligible for those new funds. Let's see if they're willing to do that, because if this disconnection thing, we're going to get blasted by these politicians. So let's preempt it. Let's ask for assistance. That money. An appropriate. Saying our hands are tied, we have to start collecting this. We feel that this is a legitimate subject for assistance to GWA. It may be the same thing for GPA if we have to do the same thing to avoid disconnection.
So we'll start with some research, and this is the bill that's still making its way through Congress, right? So
Right.
we can do some research there to see if there are currently
Well, even
any
if we,
restrictions for direct payments to utilities.
Sure. There is. Well, I don't know if there is, but I think we should get the letter in regardless, that when this becomes law, looks like something's going to happen, that we would like to be part of that distribution. Put it on the record, please.
I think what I suggest is you talk to the general manager of GPA and come up with a proposed letter
For both agencies.
for both
Would it be
agencies.
coming from us?
It'll be coming from the CCU, I think.
CC, okay.
Basically stating that it's a matter of public policy. It would be good that if they were able to receive funding from the federal government for the help of the government or the community, that we would like to suggest that that the existing rent and utilities program that they're trying to create get a lot of funds to accomplish that as we go forward, because both utilities have bond covenants that at some point we're going to have to pull the trigger. And when we're going to do disconnections, we will. It's a matter of
As part of the
life.
letter,
But therefore, what we'll do is we'll suggest that if monies come in, we would suggest that they actively or aggressively put monies into these programs that they are beginning to create. We applaud them for creating the programs to help the people. Okay? Commissioner Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Chris and Miguel are calling on page 98, determine the date to restart disconnections, because
Yeah.
that date triggers people coming in for payment plans. Do you have a date yet?
No, we don't. We were waiting to see what the guidance was on the rent and the utilities assistance program. So we just didn't want to put it out in the community and then start disconnections without some kind of a solution. Hopefully that they can bail themselves up.
And do we have a feel from, this is the one being handled by Gura now?
Guam Housing.
Guam Housing, okay.
And
do
that
we-
has $30 million, right? Available.
I believe it's at least 30 million.
And can we have any feel for, the other way you play it is you pick the date now, because you want people running over to Guam Housing and saying, I want to apply for that program to pay my utility,
Yeah.
right? Because I'm with Commissioner Guthers, but we have no idea if and when that number is going to come to GovGuam and what restrictions, if any, there may be on them or not. Or if it does flow to a program like we currently have at Guam Housing, now is the time to get people used to running to Guam Housing and filling out an application for utility relief. I think you made a good point. If we're not disconnecting, no one's going to run and say, hey, help me.
That's right.
So, and so my concern is that the money that is here, if it may all go to rent and very little go to utilities, because we're not threatening to disconnect, and yet the receivables, if I read this right, went up $1 million.
Yeah.
Which is, we can't let that go on forever, right? So I think you guys have to really think about that. Maybe reach out to Guam Housing and how can we give them a heads up. The two utilities may be pushing on utility collections, and we're going to need an extra $1 million, $2 million. Maybe they can set a reserve so that it doesn't all go to rent. Maybe
I would suggest, Simon, as part of that in the letter, we'd like to provide a briefing to the governor, lieutenant governor, regarding the status of this matter.
we could do that, but I think at least at their level, they can immediately call Guam Housing tomorrow and say, hey, we need how does this program work so we can direct our customers to that program and that they're not only thinking about rent because they're getting a free pass from power and water. The free pass is about to expire.
Yeah, and I think the thing about it is I like that the talks that we're doing right now, because it's important if we give Guam Housing Corporation an idea of how much we're looking at for the water and the power side. If you come up with a number, then they can see how does that fit into their $30 million.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe you can convince them that they need to think of it as a combined assistance to Mrs. Cruz. Yeah. We're going to give you some for rent, we're going to give you some for utilities, because both the landlords of Guam and the utility providers of Guam are now in the same boat. Yeah. They can't not get paid forever, but they want to keep it going, right? They want to keep people going. Let's make sure we get as much as we can for utilities out of the 30 million to buy you, especially if it's only, if it's only $1 million, you tell everybody, hey, go sign a payment plan with us, run over to Guam Housing, show it to them and say, here's my payment plan. I want to apply for a $50 a month or $100 to pay my payment plan. And now we can become a facilitator perhaps with Guam Housing of saying, hey, it's not just landlords that are going to be sending you people. We want to help our people get their utilities paid. And then it may mirror the bigger, if we get bigger money.
If you get bigger money.
It can mirror, they can administer the same program. It sounds like you really need to get with them now, because think of it this way. What good is, so I'm current with Francis, my landlord, but I don't have power or water.
Yeah.
I mean, so maybe Francis takes 80% and we take, some of it, and they start paying it down, something like that, where it's a kind of a collaborative community.
So we did, just to clarify, we've already made initial contact with Guam Housing to try to, ask them what the guidelines are, but we didn't think of any of these specific alternatives, so we'll follow up with them to present those.
And it really has to be, that program really has to be a rent and utility program. It can't be either or, because you have no place to stay, what good is being current on your power bill? But if you got a place to stay but can't pay for your power and water, the goal is to keep people in housing, help them pay their rent and their utilities.
Accompany that with an actual briefing, also for the governor.
The nice thing about the program is
Right, but I'm just thinking out loud, and I trust you, Tali, but something like, here's my payment plan with GWA or GPA, and here's my landlord, here's my lease. How can you help me? I'm Mrs. Cruz, right? But we get as proactive as possible, and I think setting a date, but maybe setting a date with, we urge you to go over here, but you've already talked to them, you kind of know what our customer might be seeing when they get there. Let's really see if we can help them help us.
Okay.
And most importantly, help our customers help themselves with these two programs.
Commissioner Chaco.
I just want to echo the sentiments of the other commissioners, but more importantly, it'd be best to get the arrears paid in full. Yes. Right? Get the cash up front rather than, string it through a payment plan, because it affects your cash flow, so.
If we can get the lump sum money from that money coming in.
Or maybe the housing program can put them on a payment plan if they want to dole out the money. I'm with.
Yeah.
But can't keep this up. Where it's a very difficult
I like
thing.
that.
I'd love to get the cash, but as long as we get paid, they can fund the payment plan, right? Like if they're going to pay Mrs. Cruz's landlord every month, can they pay us every month with a payment plan? Something like that.
Okay. But just remember, it should come from both GPA and GWA.
Yes, sir.
That way,
Joint effort.
yeah. Okay? What else, Miguel?
The CFO will go over the financials.
Okay. Holly?
Okay, so for the month of January, we actually did a little better. We billed 32 days as compared to December, which was 28. So our water demand went up, and we also had a good month. Our debt service coverage is at 1.3%. Our collection ratio is 95 for year-to-date. We did recalculate our December numbers. There was a formula error, so we actually did a little better than it thought
Previously.
in December. We're holding steady at our FTEs. I think that's it for this. And our days cash in hand is also pretty at 2. So if we go to the next slide, this just, again, is a picture of revenues and demand. As I mentioned, our January numbers were better than December, November, and October. This is just taking that same information and breaking it up into water and waste. And although our demand for residents has gone up, and it's just not enough to offset the reductions in our
Commercial.
To the next slide. Again, this takes a look at our revenues and our collections, both month to date and our year to date. And then following, I believe, is a breakdown of, this is without the Navy. Show you what that looks like. And then the next few slides show what our trend has been with regard to AR, and we're showing both what it looks like with our inactive accounts and with. So the orange line on the different charts show you the over 120 days, and so as we remove the inactive account, that line drops. So this is the overall AR aging, and then the next slide shows the next few slides breaks down the revenues and collections and aging different customer classes. So this is residential revenues and collections, and then AR again. See the 120 days, including the inactive accounts, really high, that orange line, and then it inactive.
So Tolly, before you leave that slide, so if I'm reading this right, February 20th, our total receivables was 11 million, and a year later it's 13 million. Am I reading that right? Just want to make sure it's on slide 10. It's on 107. Trying to get a feel for the absolute increase. That number, that 11,112, February 20th.
Right.
All right, 11,112 is your receivable. Then January 21, it's now 13 million. So that's a $2 million increase in our receivables, right? Like a 20% increase in our receivable for residential in the past year. Am I reading that right? Right. Okay. And then commercial, the one on the right is what? That is 6.9.
That's without the inactive account. It's still residential.
Without the inactive accounts.
Right.
So that's gone up even more, right? Or about
Right.
the
So
same?
if you take out the inactive accounts, see that 120-day line drop.
But your total receivable is 6.9 going to 9.2, right? So it's still a couple $1 million, right? That's your headache, right? That's what that's what we're all concerned about, right? Is that our receivables have gone up and gotten older, right? But the absolute change is what, $2 million in the past year?
And I think that we're going to be able to go back to March. The beginning of.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, that sounds like a big piece of, if we can get on their radar.
And then, as I said, the following slides are classes, customer classes. This is hotels.
Wow.
And then, yeah, the revenues like are half of what they were a year ago.
So they're paying their bill, they're just paying you a much smaller bill, like I know I am. Yeah,
Their consumption decreased,
right.
so, they're paying,
Yeah. I used to pay Miguel $10,000 a month. I'm only paying him $3,000 a month because I don't have any customers. Hey, I'd rather pay you 10, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because my people aren't working.
he'd like to pay you 10 because then his revenues would also be higher.
Yeah. So it's
But,
a real,
it's a
very
fact of
difficult.
life. Let's see what happens. We seem to be doing better with COVID. I'm hoping and praying.
Yes.
And let's see where we go in the future. Thank God we have the military construction going on. And,
But I think, I think I bet GPA has a similar headache. We're all concerned about, particularly our residential customers, they kind of have no place to go, right?
Yeah.
Especially if they're 20 to 30,000 or
All I
either
know-
not working or working very few hours, right?
I know that a lot of the hotels have a lot of military staying in them right now.
About 5,000?
I don't know.
But it's short term.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah, no, it's short term, but what I'm
It's-
saying is,
it's
it's got to be good for the hotel at least to collect some.
And it's only good for the hotels. They can't go to the restaurant.
Yeah. But at least,
Yeah, hotel people.
their consumption, because these are the people that'll pay us. If their
Right,
consumption
but
goes
I mean,
up.
they can't go to Outback, they
Yeah.
can't rent cars, I mean, the multiplier effect is really muted.
Yeah.
Right, and that's where the
But
bang,
anything's good,
the
right?
bang really hits.
Are the hotel dining areas open?
Some of them are.
Even
Some
for
are.
for outsiders?
Yes, oh
Yes,
yeah, sure.
But there are some properties that are just absolutely closed.
Closed, yeah,
The building's there, there's no reason to be open.
yeah.
There's even the non-visitor community is broke. They're unemployed,
Yeah,
so it's
like at the Westin, I think Easton is open, the
Westin
restaurant, which is a
Easton
good
is open.
restaurant.
The
But the
ones that-
downstairs is not open.
The ones that were open, I think we're fully booked this weekend because of
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
The Hilton's open?
I just made
so.
stand
I think so.
So, but I know PIC is only open their little noodle shop. They're
Yeah,
not
the
a-
noodle shop,
You
that's
can't go
right.
to the bistro, you can't go downstairs, so,
Yeah.
it's a tough situation.
It's a tough
there's
situation
no
for
question.
everybody. But,
So
you know-
that's why your letter to the governor may help,
Yeah,
just
I think
overall,
so.
get on her radar that, hey, housing assistance has to be
Yeah,
rent
they
and,
help the people,
you know,
then the people can use their stimulus for something else.
yeah, or at least they have a bucket of money, right, just to hold people over. I mean, to me, even payment plans are, if I owe 1,000 to GWA, but under a payment plan a year from now, I only owe you 500, yeah, I may still owe you, but my 1,000 didn't become 2,000, right? And,
Well, if they're gonna direct some of that money to the police, to customs, then why can't they direct it to utilities?
that's our hope,
That's our hope.
but we gotta
Okay.
get on their radar. Yeah.
So our internet revenues are about the same. About 74%. The federal funds. They can't spend it on utilities, but they can use their. Continue to reach out.
Well, I don't know, I look at the aging schedule, telling that you have here on 171, but DOE is not too bad. The bulk of their debt is like 90 days or lower. But the two problem areas I see is the airport authority, Miguel and Tulling.
Yes.
The airport authority, we still have that big receivable out there that we're trying to renegotiate, right, or whatever. And the only other one is the mayor's council.
On line
That's another one that has a big receivable hanging out like over 120 days. That's got to be from like a carnival or something where they didn't pay.
That's the other side.
No,
Okay.
that airport thing, yeah, no, that's been, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm just saying, those are the two that are your problem areas. One you can negotiate with. I think the airport at some point, you're going to settle that. But the mayor's council is, I'm glad you filed a claim. Anything else? Commissioner Sanchez?
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, so a few months ago, there was an issue where, and Miguel, please correct me if I'm not correct. The public auditor was very unhappy with, or I think alleged that we may have broken the law in the way we paid out double pay, non-double pay, and we had asked Miguel and John to talk about that because we had the auditor's report, we had an internal, especially Miguel, I think, sent us, hey, here's the auditor's report, here's our response, but we never discussed it on the record in public, right? The only public discussion has been through the release of the audit, some editorials, right, which I think actually were not accurate.
Yeah.
But did this body want to allow management, because we talked about it, we just didn't do it the last few meetings because they were the end of the year stuff, but is the body still interested, or do we think it's still necessary? The audit's been out for a few months to allow both management to explain to the commission on the record why they don't think they've broken the law. Because the way I read it is the implication of the auditor is that we broke some law, either the double pay law or the 2515, the other law, which even the governor came out and said her rationale for not paying double pay was she could use federal funds, but she would use a different pay scale. We never got federal funds. So
Yeah.
the only pay, the way I understand it from management, the only pay scale we had was the double pay, which we did for about a month, and then we terminated it, is my bad memory. And I just want to know whether the body, if not today, at
the meeting.
the meeting on Tuesday,
Yeah.
I know Miguel had prepared something, I believe John was preparing something.
Yes.
Do we as a body want to just hear from management?
Sure.
To get it on the record, kind of from our side, right? That did they break the law? What was their rationale? Do they disagree with the findings of the audit? Because if I recall, the end of the audit is he's asking the AG to investigate, right?
To look into it.
Which sort of
And they said they
begs the question that even he's not sure. I mean, he's making an allegation, but it's kind of up to the AG. But accusing or suggesting management broke the law. Under normal circumstances, we as a board would be going, what do you mean you broke the law? We would want to hear from management.
Sure.
What the heck? Did you break the law? So I just throw that out to the body. We didn't get to it the last two meetings. Is it something that we want to hear from our management formally on the record so we can ask questions, or do you want to just let it, he's issued the audit.
Let's get,
What's the pleasure of the body?
I think we should do it.
I think we should.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Tuesday.
I know,
because-
I know Miguel was ready last time. I think John was preparing.
Yeah.
Because we're gonna have both main job there, so.
Yeah,
that
and
okay?
the other thing is basically, I think we've gone through the general manager's report, the finance report, we've gone through our reports. If we have any questions on anything, we can ask them real quick at Tuesday, and then we can let the general managers address this. Okay? And I think what we should do is let them, maybe we'll address it in between when one is switching out. Let's have both general managers.
However you want to do this, Chairman.
Yeah, we'll try, I'll see how they're going to work
The
it out.
implication of the audit seemed to
No,
allege
I
that
get-
management may have broken the law, and that's.
Sure.
That's something I think we.
Well, it raised questions. Let's put it this way. It raised questions. We don't really know what the questions are because the Attorney General, the OPA didn't really come out and say here, here, or here. He just said
Well,
it's.
he called for an investigation. He wrongdoing, so.
He thought there was wrongdoing, but I don't know. Let's let them
That's
tell
fine.
us.
We haven't
Yeah.
given our team a chance.
Okay.
We've only had the
Sure.
auditors. That's why I wanted to throw
Okay.
it out there.
Okay.
So, okay.
Are there any other questions or are we ready to adjourn?
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, second?
Great. Third. Thank you. Hang in there.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much.